Hi everybody, it's David from davidim.com, and today I'm just bringing you a quick portrait session edit. This shot was taken yesterday on a Nikon D800 with a 58mm lens, 1/500th of a second at 2.8, base ISO at 50, and we're going to go for a more cinematic look. This young lady just won a competition, and we want to make her look more like a movie star. So we're going to turn this into this. Stick around and I'll show you how it's done. Hi everybody, I've got a simple portrait edit for you today. I had to duck out. A friend of mine was doing an interview on this young lady here. She just won the local singing competition, and he's writing an article on her, so I had about 5 minutes beforehand just to rattle off a few shots so that he could have something usable for his article. So what I was going for here is sort of a cinematic look, more like what you'd see in a movie or film. And I'm just going to edit one of these photos. We're going to start here with this one. You can see it's bright. I've added some light. That's what this diffuser is here. Someone's just holding this up, and it's casting some light on here just to flatter her, bring her out from the image a little bit and make it more, the thinking was more like a spotlight, you know, like she's under the lights, camera action, that sort of thing, and that this is hopefully the launch of a budding young singing career. She came out of nowhere, had never done anything like this before, and apparently blew everybody away. And we wish her great success. So what I want to do here is just sort of make it more cinematic looking. So I'm going to start by just cropping it down. I'm just going to get rid of this guy and rotate it just to straighten everything. I want to make sure that I keep this cool line here, but I'm going to bring that down. Bring this up as well, make it a little more panoramic. We can leave that blue window in there. And the first thing that pops out at me is certainly this brightness caused by the added light. But overall, we're just going to start down on our regular workflow here and check on our white balance. So again, it was probably just shot on auto, but we're going to check daylight. This is in the shade, which will be a little more blue, but the light that I added should be more warm. Daylight, we'll go cloudy. It's a little bit warmer. Shade. Probably going to end up with like a green-yellow tone to this, so I think I like the look of shade. You can run through the other ones as well and see how they're going to look, but ultimately I've got a pretty clear idea what I want this to look like. Okay, so with that, we're going to even this out so we can start working on this image. So I'm just going to take the graduated filter tool here, and I'm just going to reset it by holding Alt, press the reset, or you can always double-click on any of these. And I don't want anything on here, but I'm just going to drag it left to right across my scene. End it right about here. And the way that this works is how wide this filter is how quickly or how slowly it drops off. So I'll demonstrate that for you here. So I'm just going to start dragging the exposure down. You can see already we're a lot closer. And if I keep going, you can just see how that falls off nice and subtly, and how on this side of the gradient she's really not that affected. So that's a nice calm gradient. I'm just going to delete that one. And then if I make a shorter one here, this will show how steeply, again, we're still going to have the fall off, but it's going to take place in a much shorter time period. Or distance, I suppose. So there you go. And depending on where you want to place it, you know, that's the effect I want, but I don't want it nearly that steep. So again, I'm just going to probably drag it in about medium here. We can cover her in it, and you can always edit these things after the fact as well. It's one of the great things about Lightroom, which is the program that we are using currently. And that looks pretty good, and sometimes, you know, it takes more than one, so you can drag another one across here. That's looking a little bit better. And then I'm actually just going to drag another slight one in from the other side. So this is, instead of sort of a vignette, I'm just starting it, just funneling her into the center of the picture and where I want my focus to be. So from here, I'm just going to look at the histogram and see that we've got it pretty well stretched out. It's a little on the dark side, so I can just play with my exposure here overall. Drag it up a tiny bit. And you can also do that on this slider. You can see that the histogram I'm moving, clicking and dragging, also moves the slider. I think we were about 0.16, so it's pretty accurate to what I wanted it. And I just wanted to get a little punch here. She's sort of rock and roll, especially with the crazy pants on. And just bring that down, and I'm just watching that this doesn't go too dark. If I can have a hover over here and see where anything that went blue is now pretty well black. So I'm just going to click to keep that on, and I can just make sure that I don't overdo it. So it looks like about -20 is where I want to be there. Click to take that off. The clarity and vibrance I think are okay, because I don't want to put them on globally here. The clarity is not going to work well on her face. She's nice and young and has got great complexion, things like that, so we don't want to monkey with that, but I probably might want some just to bring out a little bit of that texture and that cool brick and the peeling paint and that sort of thing. And then the vibrance again, I doubt I'm going to want a lot of that, but I wouldn't mind some saturation perhaps on her hair just to complement and bring that out. So I can start with that, bring in a new brush. Just go to saturation here, or you can change the sliders. And let's just make sure we've got a decently high flow. And I'm going to zoom in here. Holding space brings up my little zoom tool. I'm just going to start brushing that on there. So this is going to be subtle, but it will be there. And we'll be able to check before and after as well. I just don't want to overdo it and make it look too cartoonish. This is more of an editorial photo. Like I mentioned, it's for an article, so I don't want to go too grungy or too crazy. I want it to reflect reality as well, if you were to see her on the street. So zoom back out. So you can see just a real subtle difference there. So I want to close that baby off right now and continue on. So we've got our tone curve here. That's for adding contrast and different things like that. I'm not going to get into that because it's a little more advanced, but ultimately we can play with the contrast here, left and right. Certainly I think with the rock and roll feel, we want it on the higher side of contrast. Still hovering over here to make sure too many things didn't go black, and obviously nothing's going white in this picture as well. So that's good. And I did mention that we might want some clarity added to these bricks. So I'm just going to go down here to clarity, boost that up a little bit, and ultimately just brush in a little bit. Doesn't have to be everywhere. Again, I didn't want it global. Let's see what it looks like if I add it globally. It's going to sort of make her face look a little too dark, a little too grungy. That can be cool, but that's not the look I'm going for. I want to be far more selective here. So just brush it in here, maybe in the darker areas, just to pick out a little bit of the brickwork and that sort of thing. I can also be selective with my exposure. This to me looks a little bit bright, so I'm just going to put a new brush here on exposure, back it down just a hair, nice big brush. And if I go too far, I can always back it off, or I can make it darker as well. So just really subtle here. The only other thing that's really bothering me here is her pants. They're great, they've got a lot of character to them, but maybe they're just a little bit too bright. So what I'm going to do to just pick that out is I can use the auto mask function in the brush, and that is really going to be able to pick that out because there's so much contrast. You know, it's got black on this side and brownish grays on this side. So I'm just going to make a nice big brush, bigger than I need. What I'm not trying to do is pick it out like this. Nice and big. I'm going to click the overlay and make sure mask is on so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to go one click. You can see how it picked up this area here. I'm going to do one more click, and I can see what one more click would look like. So there you go. You can see that this hasn't changed anything color-wise, but this is showing exactly what I picked out with my selection. So now that I have that, I can just go ahead and just drop the saturation on those just a tiny bit. So you can see what a difference that makes from sort of burning your eyes out and taking a little bit of the focus off of her face and her person, and now just keeping the color but backing it down a tiny bit. And from here, I want that real cinematic look. So the last thing I'm going to do is some split toning. And split toning is where I can add different colors to the highlights and the shadows. And if you look at any films, they have a real dark green typically. Not every film, but a lot of films. in the shadows, and sort of the opposite on the color wheel, like a warmer hue on the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out my highlights. So I want warmer, and I just use this eyedropper, and these are going to look pretty crazy on her right now, but that's okay. We're just looking for the sort of the color that we want, and then we will fix it later. So that's sort of the warmer color, maybe that's okay. And for the shadows, I want that sort of green, cyan, magenta, bluish tone. So that's more the color that we want right there. Okay, so now you can see, depending on where you clicked, your saturation sliders have gone up, and by default they're probably going to slide way too far up. So I'm just going to start backing that down, and you can see how we're losing a lot of that warmer color. And then I'm going to back down this one as well. That's good. And you can also mess with the balance in between, so more towards the green, more towards the orange, and just to get that sort of look that you want. Maybe I'll just back down that green a tiny bit and back down that as well. We can see before and after on that color how it went all the way from that sort of, we didn't realize it, I didn't realize it before, but it was sort of purpley, magenta, very warm, to now it's got that sort of greener cast in the shadows. I might boost my contrast here a little bit, just to really help pick that out. And I've just noticed one more thing is I might just want a subtle bit of less exposure on this side of her body where the light was casting. So I'm just going to zoom in here, just nice and subtle, nice and easy. That looked good. And then on this arm too, you can see how cold it was here with the goosebumps. I was unkind asking her to take her jacket off out in the cold. We got it done. And all together that looks pretty good. Now there's some other small things that you can do here. You can also add your sort of vignette effect. That's under effects. See if we need any more of that. I think that goes with our theme, sort of that cinematic look. And ultimately, there we go. So I think that that's achieved what we're looking for. And if I just click reset, we're going to lose all of our settings and see where we went to, where we came from. There you go. And Command Z or Control Z will bring those back. So there you go. Where we started, we straightened it up, cropped it down, changed that tone. There it is. You know what? I think this is a little bit too dark. So I'm going to bring up my masks. This was one of them. This is a little too dark for my taste. There we go. And instead I'm going to be a little more selective in how I did this. Perfect. Well, I hope you learned something. If you did, I'm going to be doing these hopefully every day. I'm going to try and be really consistent. It's not all going to be Lightroom tutorials. I've got some other ideas that I just have to work out. So if you would, please comment, like, or subscribe, and I'd love to hear from you and your input. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Have a good one.